Rain slaps the concrete of the Third Mainland Bridge like a drummer with a score to settle. Tunde stands with his cheap shoes soaked, breath fogging in the cold night air, and a small rectangle of plastic buzzing in his palm, the old phone with the cracked screen he has carried for years. Sirens keening in the distance and the smell of burning rubber prick his nose. A motorcycle barrels past, splashing water onto his trousers. Someone ahead yells, "Run!" A police van skids and blocks the lane. Tunde makes one quick choice. He slips the phone into his shirt, folds his shoulders, and walks toward the van instead of away. The phone is small, warm, and heavy with memory. 3 months earlier, a different rain is hitting the roof of Sabo Market, and Amina Adenike is laughing under a bright umbrella. Her heels scuff the mud as she moves through her small troop of camera people and friends, and she points at Tunde's stall because he is standing there with that same old phone. The screen is a spider web. The device is a joke to her and to everyone who follows her fashion page on social feeds. "How can anyone still use that brick?" she says, loud and high, and her laugh catches in the air like paper. A street vendor records her with a hidden phone, and the clip lights up screens in Lagos by dawn. Tunde hears the laughter across the market. It sounds like rain on tin, hollow and bright. He looks down at the phone in his hand, fingers brushing the sticker his mother placed on the back. "Keep it simple," she wrote. He chooses then not to answer back. He chooses to keep working. Tunde's days are made of small acts. He sells phone credits from a tiny blue booth in Oshodi, hands motioning, numbers scratched on a cardboard, and he repairs cracked screens with a crowbar of patience and a headlamp balanced on his forehead. His hands smell of solder and fried plantain. People come to him because he mends things others throw away. He uses his old phone as a test device for every repair. It wakes up when other phones sleep. He whispers small promises to it like prayers, telling it how he will change the city one tiny connection at a time. Nights he studies wiring diagrams under a small lamp, listening to lectures from a borrowed thumb drive. Old university classes, free. Locked in a flash memory card, he swaps like a sacred object. Money is always the obstacle that presses like a thumb into his chest. He cannot buy a new phone, cannot rent a better shop, and his sister Ijoma sends most of what she earns to their mother in Onitsha when she can. The network companies tower above Lagos like cold temples. Obina Communications has billboards with smiling families and promises of fiber and speed, and the men in suits sip coffee in glass offices in Lekki. They pass by his booth without notice. Tunde tries to speak with a small investor once, a woman from a development fund, but she wants guarantees he cannot give. "You need a license," she says. "You need towers." Each requirement is a new wall. He draws networks in the dust with a finger and imagines towers made of bicycle frames and old generators, little fires of signal across the city that people can reach without paying a fortune. He designs a mesh of cheap devices, a way to braid the old phones into a web that passes messages and voice, without the expensive backbone the big companies sell. A second obstacle comes in the form of bureaucracy. He travels to Ikoyi, weaving through traffic that moans like a trapped animal, and stands in the gray government office where clerks shuffle papers slowly like clouds. He files forms and is told to come back next week, and next week changes to next month. There are bribes whispered in doorways, 3,000 naira here, 5 grand there, or the word no delivered flat as chopsticks. Tunde does not have the money for bribes, and he will not put people's access on a ledger of favors. Each no presses at his ribs until he tastes iron. He holds the old phone to his ear and says, "We will find another way," and the phone hums like an old friend. A third challenge rises when Obina Communications notices something strange in the market. Signal drops in pockets where Tunde's little experiments pulse like candles. Their technicians call him curiosity and then nuisance. Ina, a field engineer for Obina, comes down into the alleys to see who is stealing their customers. She views the mesh with a helmet light, smiles at the cheap wiring, and shakes her head at the old phone. Her voice is kind but pitying. Another small rain on his dreams. Obina's lawyers send letters. Cease and desist. Demands for him to stop. The letters smell of ink and power. Tunde pins them to a corkboard like flags of storm fronts and keeps working. In these weeks he finds allies. Nuru, a quiet engineer from Mombasa with slow hands and a fast mind. Mama Ife, an old electricity seller who lets him use a corner of her stall for free. And Kofi, a university dropout who runs errands and dreams loud. The small team takes the principle of the old phone and stretches it. They strip out expensive parts, build a simple routing system that uses the cheap phones as nodes, and fashion a low-cost tower out of steel pipes and solar panels salvaged from a market stay. They name the network Iroko Net, after the tree with roots that spread far beneath the earth. Nights are full of soldering and coffee and laughter that taste like rain in a parched season. The mesh they build feels fragile and miraculous. Sometimes it blinks and dies, and sometimes it sings. Messages pass between fishermen in Badagry and farmers in Ogun without the toll of a big company. The old phone sits at the center of their tests, screen milky, buttons worn to shine. It becomes their talisman. Amina is a bright, fast storm in the city. Her social page grows like pressed mangoes, advertised and adored. She knows how to stand in light and make other people look dull. When she mocks Tunde's phone, she does not mean to carve deep. She thinks she is cutting something small from the surface of the world. Her husband, Obina Nwade, runs one of the largest telecommunications companies and sits at the top of a high tower that runs wires into whole neighborhoods. He hears about the small experiments and smiles correctly. Let them play, he tells his board. But smiles are not always empty. He feels threatened because in his sleep he saw a future where connection becomes a right and not a bill, and his fingers twitch at the keyboard at night. The rising action folds into sabotage. Obina's company sends men in suits who move like shadows. One night, Tunde's makeshift tower at the edge of the city splinters in a fierce windstorm and then burns in a small arc of flame. The group of friends huddles under a blue tarp smelling of petrol and ash. "They found us," Nuru says, jaw tight. They find that wires have been cut and a generator stolen. Mama Ife curses under her breath and squeezes Tunde's arm. A court puts a temporary injunction on their work while an investigation occurs. Media spin says they are careless, a small hacker group playing with dangerous frequencies. People begin to doubt. Donations dry. Ijoma begs Tunde to stop, to take a stable job, but he can taste the network like rain, and he refuses. The second sabotage comes in the form of a smear campaign. Viral posts, nicely designed, slick, paint their network as illegal and unsafe. An influencer, Amina, follows, posts a video of a fake warning. "Don't use these rogue towers," it says, and it cuts back to images of children with wires in their hands. The video is cheap and cruel, and Amina comments in a way that fans like, "We must be cautious." Her voice carries weight. The team loses a small grant. Tunde sits on the rooftop of his small apartment and holds the old phone up to the city, as if asking it to speak. The city answers with a million lightless windows. He opens the phone and finds a file he almost forgot. A scratchy recording from the night his mother taught him how to solder when she said, "Make what you cannot buy." The voice is small, it smells of yam and patience. Tunde presses play and tears spill hot. At the midpoint, something flips. Tunde's old phone is cracked, but inside it is a tiny chip where he once hid a backup of a program, an algorithm he wrote until his eyes bled, a routing trick that can turn ordinary phones into powerful nodes for a mesh. When they test it, the mesh runs smoother than it ever has, the signal leaping like a fisherman's net. It is a small miracle born of stubbornness and thrift. The cleverness of the code makes the network cheap and hard to shut down. But the twist is more than technical. The mocking video of Amina that used to hurt becomes the fuel for a campaign. Kofi, the errand boy, goes into his archive and finds the full clip of Amina at the market making fun of the phone. He puts it together with testimonials from people who used Iroko Net to call relatives during a funeral to send seeds across a province. The montage is raw and sharp. The flip in meaning also cuts the power of the smears. The market clip shows Amina laughing at a time when those same people she mocked could not buy a connection. Now the people are louder than her feeds. They speak into the mesh with gratitude. Amina watches her past self on a cracked laptop in her living room and feels a small earthquake under her feet. For a moment she is honest in the mirror. She did mock a person who was trying. That recognition could have stayed private, but it doesn't. Her producers see the viral montage and want more. The public begins to ask who is on the side of the city and who is on the side of the towers. City becomes a stage. Iroko Net can send a live broadcast across its nodes. It can flip a power from silence to story. Tunde knows they have one chance to reveal everything. The burned tower, the sleaze, the code, the old phone that holds both his shame and his hope. He plans a public broadcast on Lagos Day when the city listens. They borrow a flatbed truck, rig it with speakers, and park it in the center of the city where vendors sell sugarcane and the sun breaks into hard coins on metal. The truck smells of diesel and paint. People gather in curiosity, drawn by the warm hum of 100 small devices. The team straps the old phone to the dashboard like a crown. But crisis lands before the spectacle. The morning before the broadcast, there is a knock on Tunde's door and 2 uniforms, the smell of power in their cuffs. They take him in for questioning on a charge he does not understand. In custody, he learns the accusation is that he broke infrastructure laws. That night, his sister Ijoma runs to the police station with Mama Efe, crying, and argues for his release. The legal system grinds like a millstone. While Tunde sits behind a barred window under harsh fluorescent light, the news announces that Ijoma has been in an accident. She had been riding to the workshop with a bag of parts. A truck without lights hits her and she dies on the roadside. The guard splits his world into 2. Grief blunts him, a cold blade. He presses his temple to the bars and thinks of the old phone and the sticker his mother wrote, and the choices he has always made. This is the crisis. Hard choice, crowding like a storm. Sell the code, take a life-saving payout, and secure the family left behind, or risk everything for the network, to make connection free for the many who cannot pay. Obinna calls the jail with a lawyer's smile and offers a thing in paper, a large check, a partnership that would fold Iroko Net into his company's contracts, but with strings that will strangle its open heart. He whispers that he can clear Tunde's name, pay for Ijoma's funeral, build a memorial. The team outside murmurs different wants. Nuru says, "We can use the money to go nationwide." Mama Efe says, "We need security." Tunde holds the old phone, feels the bumpy plastic, remembers Ijoma laughing at an old joke. She always told him to be brave. He chooses then in the harsh jail light, and it is not easy. He signs a paper, then tears it up with fingers that shake. "No," he says, and the word is small and final. Tunde walks out of the jail with a bruise on his cheek and a sorrow that tastes like iron, and he goes straight to the flatbed truck. The broadcast must happen. The rain starts again as if the city knows about grief and chooses to wash. They pull the plug of the city's central radio and send a live transmission over Iroko Net, and on every screen they can patch into. The feed jumps from village to market to rooftop, and then the voice of Tunde comes over 1,000 speakers. He speaks slowly, the old phone in his hand, and tells the story. The mockery at Sabo Market, the burned tower, the loss of his sister, the nights soldering until dawn. He connects the smallness of his phone to the smallness of every person who is told they cannot belong. Then he plays the tape, the video of Amina laughing, spliced with messages from the people who used the network to call for help, to find lost children, to take online classes. The spectacle is raw. Lago S. leans in. Amina is in the TV studio across the city, under bright lights, chair stiff, smiling because she thinks nothing will touch her. But the video hits the feed of her producers. A street vendor, Obina's own chauffeur's cousin, pulls out his old phone and streams to 100 others. The clip is everywhere at once. Amina's face loses color. People recognize their own laughter in her mockery. Obina's PR men scramble, and their tricks look thin beside the honest faces on the mesh. The broadcast captures a crowd like a wave, and many hands lift in praise for Tunde. The unexpected witness, an old woman from Badagry who used Iroko net to get a doctor for her grandson, steps to the microphone and speaks of the night the network brought light into her house. Her voice cracks with gratefulness, and it is stronger than polish. The public reveal strips power like wind strips leaves. Investigations that had been sleeping wake up. Regulators find evidence that Obina Communications used illegal tampering to cripple independent towers. Journalists dig and find contracts with clauses that look like traps. Amina watches footage of herself and feels the floor drop. At first, the company tries to salvage the story by presenting $1 million donation, but the city does not want charity. It wants change. Protests form outside Obina's gleaming offices. The boardroom grows hollow. Obina is brought to a hearing broadcast on national channels, his confident voice thin as a reed. He cannot smile his way out because the city saw the burnt towers and the small people who speak through a mesh made of old phones. They call for resignation. The telecom regulators strip Obina's license for 2 regions. His empire creaks under the weight of evidence. Amina tries to fight back with lawyering and flashy videos. She says she never meant to harm. She says she was only joking. But in the new light, her jest looks like a shove. For a while she defends herself like a bird trying to keep a nest. The unexpected witness, Kofi, the boy who first found the market clip, testifies with a steady voice. "I kept it because it mattered to me," he says. That small truth feels like a blade in the wood of pretense. The city keeps watching. People send in thousands of messages, farmers thanking the mesh, students passing exams with remote lessons, mothers who kept their babies warm with advice from distant nurses. The board that once bowed to Obina now finds its chairs empty. Tunde's rise is not clean. Alongside public praise comes the attention of people who want to profit from him. Investors pound at his door. He meets men in crisp shoes who speak of billionaire offers and global expansion. He imagines the money tasting like salt on his lips. He imagines building towers that reach the last villages. He imagines a foundation in his sister's name. He imagines being wealthy and safe. But each glittering offer smells faintly of the same thing he refused months before: control. The old phone buzzes in his pocket, and he remembers the sticker that reads, "Keep it simple," the words like a small commandment. The first climax is the public spectacle that cracks power. The city watches as Obina walks through a crowd that used to worship his brand and hears shouts for justice. He is escorted away, his corporate logos removed from billboards like shells sloughed off a turtle. The regulators hand down fines and people cheer. Amina sits in a small room, light leaking from under the door, and the microphone is cold to her touch. She reaches for the old phone like someone searching for a map. Tunde's face is on the screens across the city. He speaks Washan with normal words of grief and hope. He does not say, "I told you so." He does not raise his voice. He offers instead the open form of his network to the regulators, to the people, to anyone who will help keep it fair. The crowd is a tide, and for a moment it lifts him. The second climax swirls in the private rooms where deals are made. Obina's lawyers try to buy silence with offers that smell like velvet. They visit Tunde in a hotel with stale coffee and smooth smiles. They offer him wealth, control, apartments, and a seat at a table he never wanted. They ask him that if he signs, they will not only keep his network running, they will make him a figurehead, a visible billionaire with a foundation and a suit. It is everything society promised him. The choice seems simple. He touches his sister's photograph, hears the tapping of the old phone like a far drum, and thinks of Ijoma's hand, small and firm, around his. He remembers Mama Effe's words. Use what you have for others. He makes the hardest choice. He accepts investment, but he writes ironclad rules into the deal. The network will remain open source in core routing, tariffs will be capped for rural users, and he sets up a trust run by community representatives, not corporate men. The paper stings because it means he must enter the halls he once avoided. He signs anyway, but the contract is not a sellout. It is a cage with doors he can open from the inside. The unexpected witness in the second climax is a young reporter from Kigali who had once interviewed Tunde for a small segment and now writes with fire. She ties together the burnt towers, the mockery at the market, the hands that rebuild. Her piece reaches other countries. The world reads how one boy with an old phone and a mother's sticker fought a company with a tower and 1,000,000 bills. Obina's stripping of power becomes a cautionary tale. Amina stands in a quiet room and sees the damage done. She feels real regret like a cold wind and reaches for apology. Tunde receives her message in the middle of a shareholder meeting. He reads it with the old phone in his hand, and for a second he imagines the laughter at Sabo Market as a stone in a shoe walking him forward, not a chain. The resolution follows months later. 6 months after the broadcast, and the hearings and the difficult contracts, Lagos feels different. The air seems to hold a quieter, electric hum. Children in small villages do homework late into the night because the mesh brings them lessons. A woman in Badagry sells parrotfish with online orders. Remote clinics share scans and save lives. Tunde's company grows. His hair has more silver where the city used to press worry, and he wears a suit sometimes because people want to picture success. The suit is not a new skin, just another tool. The old phone rests on his desk like an old friend in a little wooden box Mama Efe gave him. It is clean now. He has mended the cracked screen with a careful hand. The sticker, "Keep it simple," has faded, but is still legible. Amina's life changes too. She steps down from the celebrity chair and starts a small program that visits schools and speaks about the harm of quick laughter. She volunteers once, speaking to a group of young women about sensitivity and power. Her voice is low, honest. The city watches as she does work. In public spaces, not only on lit stages. People are skeptical at first. Then they see her making small amends, visiting injured factory workers, arranging equipment donations to schools she once snubbed. Her online feeds slow. She learns to listen. Tunde returns to Sabo Market on a warm Sunday with the old phone in his pocket and a small bag of things. A new soldering kit, a bundle of SIM cards he helped subsidize, and 50 naira for a roasted plantain seller. He walks to the place where the mockery occurred, and Amina is there selling artist prints at a pop-up gallery, hands stained with ink. She looks up when she sees him, eyes a mixture of surprise and something like regret. People pause. The market smells of sugarcane and grilled fish. Tunde walks across, the old phone heavy with years and choices, and hands it to her across the stall. "I kept it," he says, simple and true. "It reminded me to keep building. You can have it back if you want to learn." Amina takes the phone with hands that tremble a little, and she laughs soft and low, not cruel, but small and honest. She slides the cracked device into her purse like a lesson learned. 6 months later, the city shows signs that change is not a fad. Small operators share bandwidth under new rules he helped write. Obina's remaining holdings are smaller and watched. They rebuild more careful and less cruel. People who once could not afford calls can now check market prices, call for help, and study late. Tunde opens a small training center in the market where he teaches soldering and networking to anyone who wants to learn. Children with scraped knees and bright eyes come by and build toy towers with tin cans. The old phone sits on a lower shelf like a relic. The sticker on it has softened, but the letters are still clear. Keep it simple. It remains the symbolic object that reminds everyone that small things can hold to great power. In the last light of afternoon, Tunde walks up the bridge again, where the rain is a memory, and stands looking over the water. The city hums with 1,000 small lives. He reaches into his pocket, fingers closing around the old phone, and he feels the weight of everything he chose and everything he lost. He breathes out, and the air tastes like fried yam and future. He thinks of Mama Ife, of Ijioma's laugh, of the weeks of solder and the nights in a police cell. He remembers the quick choice he made on the bridge months ago to step toward risk, and understands how simple acts stack into a life. His phone vibrates softly. A message from a student he taught appears. "We passed, sir. Thank you." He smiles. Moral: small tools and steady hearts can change an entire city's life. Do you agree? If this story moved you, subscribe, share with a friend, and tell us your own small phone-turned-big dream story in the comments below. The smile stays on Tunde's lips for a heartbeat, then the crowd's quiet swells, and the old phone tucked in his shirt seems to weigh the air with memory as a new door cracks open across the field of light from the flatbed speakers. A figure steps from the edge of the gathering, a man in a plain suit whose presence parts the people like rain parting on a zinc roof. And when he speaks, his voice is steady and even. He says he is not a rumor, but a living plan, a donor who has watched from the shadows, a billionaire with a soft voice for the poor and a clear eye for the future. And he names himself as a steward of the city's hope, not its trophy. And the crowd hums with a mixture of awe and doubt as he reveals documentation on a tablet showing thousands of households already mapped into the Iroko net, showing how the mesh has brought light to clinics, classrooms, and homes, and he announces that he will finance not a single project but a living system, an otashi. Pen source core protected by a community council with actual seats, a fund that cannot be siphoned by any single hand, and a promise to cap tariffs in rural pockets while letting urban users pay only a fair fraction. The air tastes of rain and diesel as the speech lands, and Tunde feels the old phone tremble in his grip as if it, too, recognizes the shift, the moment when profit and poverty cease to be linear enemies and become competing facets of one city's anatomy. And he asks aloud, with a tremor of hope, what about Obina's ghost in the machine? What about the lawsuits that still circle like scavenger birds? What about the fear that a savior could become another master? And the new investor answers with calm, "No master here, only a framework." And the phrase lands like a coin dropped into a pot of steady rain. But the interval then flickers, and the ride becomes a test of trust rather than a triumph. The room beyond the truck's glare is not a hero's stage, but a negotiation floor where minutes stretch into an hour and the city's heartbeats are measured in kilowatts and paperwork. Obina's former lieutenants twitch in their seats trying to recast the moment as a PR lull, while Amina waits in a quiet room with a single lamp, her hands still stained with ink, watching the live feed with a patient doubt that looks almost like virtue. And Nuru's slow grin shows that the math of alliances has shifted. Open access, yes, but under a governance that belongs to the people who kept the mesh alive when the vultures circled. Kofi stands surrounded by a ring of scooters and market stalls, whispering to a group of students who want to know if this is a fair exchange or a clever trap. And Mama Efe slides her thumb along the edge of a solar panel as if reading a map. The first twist's bloom is that the billionaire's presence is real, but the real power is the counsel to come, and the second twist is the hidden toll, a new kind of wealth check that asks not for coins, but for proof of community stewardship, which means Tunde must co-create with the very people who feared him a year ago rather than fight to lead them. And this conflict presses on his chest as a weight that thrills and terrifies in equal measure. Midway through this open-door moment, a second turning point arrives with a sigh from Amina's corner of the city where she has spent months learning to listen and to repair. The Kigali reporter's piece has traveled far enough to become a mirror, and in that mirror she sees herself as a cautionary tale about pride and pardon. When Obina's lawyers try to recapture momentum by throwing numbers, the new investor does not blink, and their panel shifts to a dialogue about data sovereignty, user rights, and the right to critique power without fear of legal ruin. A hush lands as a small gang of market kids used by the mesh to test a new node shows up with a homemade device that relays a voice into the crowd's ears. And the crowd hears Tunde's mother's voice through the mesh saying, "Keep it simple." Then the children's voices rise in unison as if the city itself has become a chorus. This is the moment when Tunde recognizes that real wealth is not a check, but a platform that refuses to close when the night grows loud with questions, that the fear of being swallowed by success can become a commitment to sustain what you started, and the mentor in him, Mama Efe's memory, speaks through his hands as he signs the first of the new governance papers with a steady breath, knowing every loop of the signature is a pledge to a future where the network cannot be shot down by a single company, where a grandmother in Badagry can call for help and hear a human voice in the same moment a student in a Lagos dormitory logs onto a lesson, and where Amina's apology is not a final act but a continuing chorus that keeps the city honest. The public breakthrough finally lands in a thunderstorm of small victories. The media circus subsides into a rhythm of truth-telling and accountability. The regulators move from watchers to participants, and the Foundation's first annual report arrives with a list of names that read like a map of the city's heart. The grandmothers who charge phones at stalls, the teachers who stream lessons into dark rooms, the farmers hugging their old radios with new hope, and the children who volunteer to help fix a node after a rainstorm, their fingers sticky with solder and dreams. The wealth gap remains visible but no longer as a blade hovering over the neck of the city. The new model is neither charity nor autonomy alone, but a hybrid of accountability and generosity, with a billionaire as a quiet witness rather than a loud ruler, a guardian who believes the mesh can outlive the man who seeded it, and Tunde, with the old phone nestled in his pocket like a stubborn seed, embracing the role of a teacher and a steward, not a conqueror. The old sticker's words glow faintly on the device, "Keep it simple," and the device itself has become a symbol. Simplicity as a technique of justice, not a retreat from complexity, a way to turn fragile hope into durable expectation. Then the interval and restart loop tightens again as the camera cuts to Amina kneeling to help a vendor repair a tiny printer, and the investor's handshake is broadcast worldwide, and a new line of dialogue pierces the smoke. "We did not buy your network. We shared a promise." And the crowd answers with a chorus of voices from every market, classroom, and clinic. A chorus that says yes, share more, fix more, and hold the line so that no one can weaponize access again. As the sun sinks into a city brushed by rain and electricity, Tunde steps forward to the river's edge and looks at the water where two reflections meet, the old phone's cracked screen and the far-off glow of towers, and feels the room in him widening, the hunger for more good done not by a single hero but by many hands, and the long, quiet sigh of Lagos as a living story that refuses to end with one payoff or one greed-exposed confession. The last note lands like a soft drum beat. The next chapter will be about training the next generation, about a foundation that keeps the open lines humming, about a city learning to govern itself with kindness as its compass. And as he pockets the old device again, a message flickers on the screen from a student who says simply, "We passed, sir. Thank you." And the screen's glow warms his face as the light on the bridge glints, and the film resets with a gentle fade to black, promising another act where the tiny gadgets that once sparked a storm will keep lighting a wider, wiser horizon.